views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Defund, reallocate, redefine. Those are just a few of the common words as recent times when it comes to policing and keeping our city safe. Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, here from my very special guest, Chair of the Public Safety Committee in the New York City Council. You're watching Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime, and of course, we thank you for watching and joining us here on Perspectives. You can watch it every week here on BronxNet Channel 67. Of course, you can catch us on the web, and definitely stay connected to us via social media. Social media is BronxNet TV. For myself personally, professionally, Daren C. Jaime on Facebook, and then on Twitter and Instagram, DC Jaime 23. There you can find some information as well as possibly some inspiration. But coming up front and center on today's show, the NYPD is never short of criticism or praises. New York's finest is as good as they come, but a national cry to defund police departments, largely due to their often deadly use of force, particularly against unarmed blacks and people of color. So the question at hand is this: how do we ensure that our city and its citizens are safe from crime while holding police officers accountable? Here to share her perspectives is our neighboring Queens Council, Queens New York City Council member, Miss Adrienne Adams. She is also elected to the City Council in 2017, becoming the first woman elected to represent City Council District 28 in Queens. Among her many other roles, she is currently chair of the Public Safety Committee. And we say to Councilmember Adams, welcome to Perspectives.
Thank you so much, Daren. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's glad to really have this conversation because it's a much needed conversation. And, you know, when we talk about the police right now, we know that New York City has the largest budget, almost $10 billion when it comes to policing. But yet and still, when you hear words like defund the police and reallocate, you get a lot of criticism. So talk to me about what your perception is right now of the department and where do you think it needs to go?
Well, you know, the department, you're right, is going through an incredibly difficult time right now. There needs to be continued action towards real reform based on redefining, and we hear that buzzword a lot lately. But it's true. We've got to redefine, or some folks say reimagine, public safety and the NYPD. So we've got to have a movement and a shift away from social services and behavioral health services from the NYPD. There have to be more efficiencies put in place when it comes to police officers on duty and increased savings through full civilianization. That's one of my pet peeves when it comes to the budget and the NYPD budget. NYPD claims that there are approximately 386 uniformed officers who are performing clerical duties. 386. My sources tell me it's more like 500. So we're talking police officers, traffic enforcement agents, and other uniformed officers who handle routine tasks that police administrative aides should be performing. Non-uniform civilianized individuals should be performing these tasks, yet we have uniformed police officers sitting at desks doing these duties. This is an efficiency that we need to take a look at because we're looking at over $100 million being wasted alone right here.
So it's a simple fix to kill. The problem is, what's the problem?
I think it's a multifaceted issue. It's very complex also because some folks look at it, and you mentioned the word defund. I'm not the defund person. I like to look more of a reallocation because I think that words matter. And as a former educator, We know that words matter. So defund to some means to take everything off the table. And that's not what we can do when it comes to NYPD and the safety of New Yorkers. So we have to take a look at the bigger picture. There are a lot of nuances, I think, that in spite of the spike right now that we have in violence, and not just gun violence, it is violence, and it's totally off the hook right now. We know that. We have an opportunity to nuance police safety, public safety in the city of New York, if you will. It's an opportunity, but it's given to us at the most horribly inopportune time in the midst of a pandemic. The pandemic has brought out, I don't want to say the good, the bad and the ugly of, everything that's not New York, what we're not used to. We've got disorder now in places where we're used to having order. So we've got an opportunity to nuance this public safety thing. We've got to get at the table. We've got to be about our business to keeping New York safe.
Yeah. Talk to me about, when we talk about reallocating of funds, one of the things that's talked about is mental health.
Yeah.
And mental health and policing. Every police officer doesn't have to go out on every call. There are some calls that a mental health professional could actually take. What has been your conversation and what has been your response from NYPD when it comes to the issue of mental health?
Surprisingly enough, NYPD doesn't want to be about the business of everything that they've been put into the business of. So that's something that everybody needs to know also. And as chair of the Public Safety Committee, I've been, privy to having these conversations with the rank and file, with the commissioner, with, levels of brass in the NYPD. They don't necessarily want to be in mental health services, social services. So we've got to get them out. We've got to pull them out, but we've also got to make sure that these workers that are coming to handle these situations, some dangerous situations, some not, we've got to make sure they're protected also. So we've got some things to think about. That's why I say we have an opportunity to nuance this public safety thing. NYPD does not necessarily want to be in the business of mental health and social services.
Yeah, and that's good to know, right? I think that's good to know that they don't want to do that. We know that when these calls come, they can sometimes have deadly outcomes. When we talk about this, a mental health officer or a mental health personnel in place of an officer, a lot of people seem to be in favor of that. And so does that seem like something that we could see in the near future?
I think so. Again, it's a tremendous opportunity that we have. As you're speaking, I'm thinking of a constituent of mine that lost her life when a 911 call was made when she was having an episode. She was bipolar, and she was having an episode, and the police were called. Of course, anyone trained to know the behavior of people that have bipolar disorder would know what to do and handle that situation. What happened in this particular instance was the NYPD came in full force. Of course, the individual was belligerent. She was irritated, of course. She was agitated. And the police handcuffed her and then forced her to lay force down on her mattress, suffocating her. So she lost her life because of the situation, because of, I dare say, a panicked police officer or officers that just did not know how to handle somebody that was having an episodic instance because of bipolar disorder. This is just one small instance that goes on all the time, unfortunately, in the daily lives of our officers. Like I said, I don't believe that they want to be in that position. They're just not equipped to handle it, nor should they be.
Yeah. I want to come back after the break, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about how we police the police. What does that look like? A major conversation that we're going to have. We'll continue our conversation in just a few seconds here on Perspectives. And hello, welcome back to Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you. We are talking the topic of conversation, the NYPD, and we're pleased to have Queens, New York City Council member Ms. Adrienne Adams with us here on the show. She is also the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and we're glad to have her in this discussion. And Councilmember Adams, I'll just ask this question again about, we talked before the break about policing, what that looks like. Being able to police the police, because when you have instances of brutality, instances of questionable force, excessive force, many times the police are left to give us an account of what they did, and we know how that's gone, leaving a bad taste in many people's mouths. What plans or what have you discussed in council in terms of how do we deal with this issue of police actually policing police?
Well, one thing that the council did over the past couple of months is we've passed several reformative pieces of legislation meant to reform the police department. The first thing that we did was initiate the disciplinary matrix for the police department, which is a document that's never been codified. So it's actually lists of rules and regulations that the police must follow. So it's now the law. There are specific consequences for actions that are made that are deemed unlawful against citizens. So that's the one thing that we've done. The other way that we take a look at things as far as policing the police, of course, has to do with oversight and legislation. We enacted a really, really big bill in March regarding police reform. One of the most controversial pieces of legislation, and the only thing that New York has in our jurisdiction above any other jurisdiction in the country, is qualified immunity. And that's being debated right now on Capitol Hill. But New York is the only jurisdiction in the country to have actually enacted and ended qualified immunity. That's a legal doctrine that shields police officers from any personal liability stemming from misconduct on the job. That's huge. So we've done that. That's law. We've also taken a look at a resolution that we passed. That's a part of our police reform legislation package as well. That's gone up to the state. We'll see if they codify that with us. But that would be to actually remove the police commissioner's exclusive authority over the CCRB. And we know that CCRB often makes recommendations to fire and other serious consequences could be made against police officers for infractions. And then the police commissioner actually has the discretion to overturn those decisions of the CCRB. So we've got a resolution now that says that that can no longer be policy, that the CCRB would ultimately have that authority instead of the police commissioner. Something else that we're doing is we passed another piece of legislation that has to do with investigating police officers who have exhibited bias. So we take a look at this file, this Clouseau file of months ago, where this supposed officer, high-ranking officer, was actually caught on a website, on a blog. It happened to be a white supremacist blog, and he was caught out there saying all kinds of racist things, and it was brought to the attention of high-ranking authorities and investigated and all that, and he was totally found liable for that behavior. So we've actually got a law in the books now that says that biased police officers must be investigated. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So we've got several means right now to, Daren, police the police, as you say. Unfortunately, it has taken a long, hot summer. I call it the George Floyd summer.
Right.
These things actually put in place and to make people stand up and look at the issues that a lot of us have known have been going on for decades.
Here's an issue I want you to help me unpack. We talk about diversity in the New York City Police Department. I hear this all the time. New York is one of the most diverse police departments we have. Okay, I'll give you, there's diversity there. But when you start talking about high-ranking officials and you start talking about the top tier,
right,
I'll say the top 300 to 500 people, there's no diversity there.
That's right.
It seems as though that is missed by the wider public about where we are, because this is also affects decision making. And if you don't have diversity in decision making, what you get are what you see is what you get.
Absolutely. What a fantastic point. And it's something else that is revelatory for us right now because it's actually something that is being looked at. The mayor has actually taken a look at this and he's actually put in place contingencies for this diversity issue in the high ranks within the NYPD. So of course, we have the agreeance when it comes to the police commissioner, when it comes to Commissioner Shea. That's completely recognized and it's completely obvious that we are people of color are in the minority when it comes to high-ranking positions within the NYPD. And now things have changed, and we have now put items in place, the mayor has, put items in place at the NYPD where the interview process is going to be scrutinized a lot more, where the ability to interview and hire more people of color at higher ranks should be taking place now at an even higher rate than we've ever seen before. I'm also encouraged, and this is a little sidebar, I'm also encouraged by the numbers that we saw yesterday come out. The applicants that have actually applied to become police officers, applicants of color. We broke a record the other day with that. My office did a high push for it, in my district, in District 28. And I know others did as well, to get more officers who look like the communities that they serve involved in policing so that we really do have that true community policing, not just, a hashtag, but we need for it to be true. We also passed legislation that has to do with residency mandates for police officers in the city of New York so that we have new officers coming in who now by law have to reside in New York City. That's something that we've been talking about again for decades. Well, we're going to do that. So I think all these things combined will give us the opportunity to see these changes that we've been looking for so long.
Share with me a little bit more about the residency requirement. We know that's been a big sticking point for a lot. And we know that there were a lot of pushback, particularly from the union, who said, listen, we don't want this because New York City is unaffordable right now. Congratulations on that, but talk to us about how this is gonna roll out.
Yeah, there is a residency requirement now for all new recruits to actually live within New York City. It's something that we saw a need for tremendously. Not only that we saw a need for, but our communities have been crying out for this for a very long time. When we look in the communities that are policed the heaviest, and we see a lot of the times who is actually doing the policing of those communities, they don't look like the folks that they are policing, and that creates distance between members of the community and the police. It creates fear between members of the police department and the community. The police fear the community fears the police. I think that if I were to know that my next door neighbor from South Jamaica, which I have a lot of them who are on the force, by the way, actually are in the precincts that take care of me, I know that personally it makes me feel better sleeping. So I'm sure the people of the city of New York that are Black and brown will feel a whole lot better knowing that their next door neighbor, their cousin, their uncle, their relatives, their children now have more of an expansion into the opportunities of the NYPD.
Yeah. Coming back after the break, we're going to continue our conversation with Councilmember Adams, talking about the NYPD, talking about cultural competence when we return right here. And welcome back. Daren Jaime here on Perspectives. Councilmember Adrienne Adams, our guest, chair of the New York City Public Safety Commission. Glad to have her with us, being on this and having this conversation, as it's a much needed dialogue about the NYPD and actually where do we go from here. Before the break, I talked a little bit, Councilmember, about cultural competence, because once you know a community, you can better serve a community. And having that cultural competence is going to be a huge difference maker. But from your perspective right now, if you had to say where community police community relations are, how would you grade it?
Oh my gosh, Daren, what a great question. And it's not a universal perspective, mind you, because there are different relationships depending on what communities you go to. The relationships that my community has with my precincts in Southeast Queens are far different than the relationships that some of my colleagues have in other parts of the city. So it's not really painted with a broad brush, the relationships there. The relationships in some precincts versus the communities are very antagonistic. I've heard the stories, they're horrendous. Compared to, and I'll brag a little bit about, it's not perfect, but in Southeast Queens, we do have very good relationships with our precincts overall. Community is involved with the precinct council meetings on a monthly basis for the precincts that I oversee in my district. So we've got a lot of community participation, and we have leadership who listen. You know, like I said, they may not always get it right, but at least we're all at the table together and they're listening to us. In other areas of the city, not so much. So it's really difficult to paint it with a broad brush. I wish that there were more standard ways of operating in each precinct. And I have brought this to the commissioner as well. How do we standardize leadership in the individual precincts so that we don't have to have, quote unquote, a model of behavior for community policing and community relationships for NYPD? It's much like education. When you talk about charters versus, non-charters, it's the same kind of perspective in my mind. Why can't we just have one uniform? If something works, why can't we just go with that model and just say this is the model for everybody?
Right. It seems like a no-brainer, but
It does.
I guess that's why you got to keep having meetings, right? So
exactly.
we can possibly get there. But listen, in these meetings, I know whether they're police community council meetings that you're having with the brass, one topic that comes up a lot is that of quality of life. I think anybody in New York City is more concerned about quality of life issues than its residents. They have a real strong, concern about quality of life. From your perspective, give us a little insight as to what the department is saying regards to quality of life issues and what you would like to see.
I would like to see quality of life issues totally dissipate. We're at an all-time high right now with instances of quality of life issues and problem. And again, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, even though we were told yesterday that masks can come off. Make no mistake about it, we are still and will be for quite some time suffering the ramifications because of this pandemic that we've been in for over a year. So while we've seen a spike in crime, we've seen a spike in quality of life issues, we've seen them expand. We've seen illegal ATVs and dirt bikes pretty much take over a lot of segments of communities across the city. We've seen public urination and defecation. Why? A lot of different reasons, but some say it's because a lot of people don't have any place to go, literally, as far as the homeless situation is concerned and the houseless situation is concerned. We've also seen a lot of instances of noise amplified mufflers. Who likes to hear cars speeding down the street, wherever you may be? You can hold the hand of a 5-year-old and you've got the backfire sounding like gunshots when we're also paranoid anyway about walking down our streets right now. So quality of life issues are at an all-time high. Largely in my estimation is because they've taken a back burner perspective with NYPD because of other issues that have been prioritized. I've had this conversation with my precinct command, where officers will get complaints or complaints will come into the local precinct and the response will be, call your council member. That's unacceptable. But that is the response that has been coming out of precincts now for over a year. I bring it up and bring it up. Sometimes they deny it, sometimes they don't. But we cannot push off public safety and enforcement responsibilities onto a city council member when the job of NYPD is to enforce and protect the citizens of New York.
Yeah. So as we're now into the summer, we're about to wrap up. I just want to ask a question about where do you see things happening in the short term, in the future, with your work, and what's going to happen with NYPD?
Well, I know what I hope, but I also wish that I could predict the future. I think that, well, I'll just start here. My hope is, because of the programs and the initiatives that are now coming from City Hall and from the mayor, we're looking at Summer Rising coming out of the mayor's office. That's where we've got an expansion now of education opportunities for our children. Our schools are going to be open for all of our students to continue academic learning, to have cultural exercises, to be able to get out, field trips, a lot of expansion going through. And my hats are off to Misha Porter, our new chancellor, who is spearheading a whole lot of goodness coming out of DOE right now. We've also got another initiative coming out of the mayor's office, Safe Summer NYC. Now, we know that last summer took a lot of our youth who would be otherwise engaged in positive experiences. Some of them were taken off track because they had nothing to do, nowhere to go, and frustrated because of being cooped up due to this coronavirus issue. So this summer, the mayor has an initiative, Safe Summer NYC, where the youth will be the focus of the city of New York. We've got more of a dependence and funding for a crisis management system and violence interrupters across the city. So they will be out. They will be reinforcements for our children. We'll also have fortification of CBOs in our districts that have programs and opportunities for our youth to get involved with. The mayor has also funded NYCHA basketball courts, all of them. He's promised to fund them by the end of the summer. We also have just programming going across the city for our youth. And that is my hope, get our youth engaged. We're going to get them moving into positive directions. We've got a lot of activities involved when it comes from the city. I encourage everybody to go to the mayor's website to find that information. But that is my hope. That is my hope.
Well, we have great hope. And I want to thank you, Councilmember Adams, for being with us here on Perspective, sharing with us a little bit of an insight and perspective. Very much needed conversation, very much need to have this information for the public so that way we can get a better look at what is going on with the NYPD, because certainly a lot of questions. All righty. Thank you again.
Thank you, Daren. A pleasure to be with you.
All righty. And that about wraps up for this edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. Saying until next time we meet, take care and God bless.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Because in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show.